Oh, welcome to the Shortway Show. I'm so happy that you are here with me today, and it's a little bit past 7:30 on the East Coast. I'm a little bit late. I know. I'm sorry. I had a crazy day trying to make the world a better place. I keep failing, but I keep trying. I'm either stupid or stubborn. I'm both. I don't know, but I keep doing it. I have with me this evening someone who is really interesting, talking about the idea of the CBDC, the Central Bank Digital Currency that so many people are talking about, chatting about, upset about. This man is an entrepreneur and an activist. He is the man himself, Aaron Day. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. If you want to follow what Aaron's doing, you can check him out. All the details I put on the show description in both Facebook and YouTube, or just follow him on Twitter at Aaron R. Day. So you, my friend, are against the CBDC. Is that correct?
I'm against. Yeah, to me, it's the single biggest threat to human liberty. So I've actually dropped everything that I'm doing to specifically focus on educating people about this and empowering them to do something about it directly. So yeah, to me, it's enemy number one.
Wow, that is broad. But I feel like you're not a government fan in general, though.
No, I'm not a government fan in general. I've been a pro-liberty person actually since high school, but I'm actually a serial entrepreneur. Started my first company in the mid 90s and sold my first company and then started a healthcare company, which was destroyed by Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and the Attorney General, Eric Holder.
Wait a minute. Those things were all very helpful. That's what Obama told us. Obama told us that these things were helping us out. How can that be true? Come on now.
Well, it absolutely wasn't. I mean, in my case, I had a very simple business model, which was we helped corporations lower their healthcare costs by providing financial incentives for employees to lose and maintain a healthy weight. It was literally that simple. And it turns out it works. Believe it or not, financial incentives, rewarding people for outcomes, offering them choice, and making the program voluntary. Believe that was the cornerstone of what the program was all about. But imagine that. Yep. And it worked. And companies were saving money. We had companies that were reducing their healthcare costs by as much as anywhere from 5 to 10%. They were seeing a 5 to 10x return on the program. And Obamacare came in and basically participation trophied our business model. So in other words, our incentives were around results. We were paying people for measured results. And they said, no, you can't do that anymore.
They made that against the law.
They made it so you could only reward people for trying to lose weight. You can't reward them for actually losing weight, and within certain guidelines. And then there's all these caveats, but basically it made our program ineffective. And
got it. Okay, and so, that sounds like government. That sounds like right in line. That's on brand. Okay, yep. That's on brand. Yes. Okay. So, but was it just Obamacare that did this?
No, it was also
Dodd-Frank, and you said the Secretary of State. You said
Attorney General Eric Holder.
Attorney General.
So it's weird. So again, this was my first business was more complicated. This is a pretty simple business model. We're paying people, we're measuring them every quarter, and then we're giving them rewards. So we're giving them either reloadable debit cards, or checks, or points that can be redeemed for merchandise. Well, Dodd-Frank made it so that we were working with Citibank, and basically Citibank had to exit that prepaid debit card market because of special fees that were assessed on banks with more than $10 billion worth of assets. And so we had debit cards loadable, and we have clients in 43 states. So we have people that are the second, third year of the program reloading these cards. And now all of a sudden we're given one of these 90-day notice and you're done type of scenarios. So then we're like, okay,
I want to be clear though. Hold on. I want to be clear on this. So every person who had this card was literally losing weight and becoming healthier.
Yes.
And the government said, no, that's a bad, don't do that.
Government said, don't do that. You can't measure, you can't reward them for losing weight. You can only reward them for trying. which
Got it.
destroys the program. It destroys the ROI.
Yes, it
I
does.
mean, again, it's they participation trophied it. That's the best way I can describe it. So then
Wow.
Dodd-Frank came in and said, basically, we can't use debit cards anymore because it actually made them too cost prohibitive. And the vendor we had been working with, Citibank, exited the business and
Wow.
used that. And so then we're like, all right, well, we'll use checks. So
Yeah. Change it. Okay. I
so
got you.
we had a vendor that we were working with who had been in that business for over 30 years. They were in the check writing service business. They had clients all over the United States because it's a lot cheaper for. So we give them the file, we tell them where to mail the checks, and then they could do it at an 80% reduced cost from what it costs us to do it internally.
Love that.
So they had clients in all sectors, large and small. And the Attorney General, Eric Holder, decided to crack down and said, well, we think that one or more of this check writing service is involved with offshore gambling.
Oh,
So they seized the funds of all of the clients. So we had checks going out, hundreds of
hold on. I
thousands.
want to be clear again. Hold on, be clear. So government said there is a chance that maybe some of this check writing company's clients might be involved with offshore gambling. Therefore, we will now seize all of the funds. Did I get that right?
Correct. So we had
on brand.
So we had hundreds of thousands of dollars of checks out, and this is the beauty of this, to nurses. We had a large client that had nurses that had hospital systems all over the country, hundreds of thousands of dollars rewards going out. And not only were those checks going to bounce, but we weren't even given the option to add funds back and make those particular funds whole. There was no option given, but for those checks to bounce. And then we were presumed guilty and had to basically make our case as to why we should get our money back, which of course we eventually did. But then that left us in a situation of, I can't offer my business model anymore because you can't offer reward for results. I can't use debit cards, and now I can't use this check writing service. So basically,
and you just screwed over a bunch of nurses.
And we just screwed over a bunch of nurses. And so, so hell hath no fury like an entrepreneur scorned. That actually set me off. I mean, I was already pro liberty, but that put me firmly 100% in the activist camp, starting around 2009, 2010. So moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project. Eventually became
You're a Free State guy. That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Was the chair of the Free State Project for a while. Ran a bunch of PACs and organizations. I ran for a U.S. Senate, and there's a long story behind that, but we won't go into that here. And then I actually exited politics in
Smart man. I wish I could do it. I'm still stuck.
After 2018, I ran for governor as a libertarian in 2018. So, but I gave up. I said, I think we need America 2.0 from first principles. I don't think we can fix this existing system. And so what I decided to do was I went off into the land of crypto and blockchain. Mm-hmm. And I got into crypto in 2012. I learned about Bitcoin through the Free State Project, through a Free Stater named Ian Freeman.
Sure.
And in 2019, I exited fiat completely. So I exited banks and moved 100% into crypto, gold, and silver. So I've been living off of crypto, using crypto.
Wow.
And I was looking at different business models and ways that you could take the technology behind Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin basically offers the ability to separate money and state. And you can use that same blockchain technology to get rid of middlemen in every sector. You could use it to fix the stock market. You could use it to fix land titling. Basically, you can sell anything that you can imagine, no matter how big or small, any size, any scale. You can you could trade without third parties using the internet. And I was on that path.
I remember I actually spoke at a blockchain event when I was running for governor myself too, because I was trying to get rid of the New York State bit license, which is garbage. Yep. I was trying to get rid of that. And when I spoke, I said people are scared of blockchain. Right? They're like, oh no, it's like drug people and stuff. It's bad. And I said, hold on, imagine for a second that when you say bought a house, everybody knew that you bought the house, and it didn't matter whether it was a piece of paper at some state office or not. Everybody knew. When you got married, everybody knew you got married. You bought a car. Everybody knew you owned a car. Like everybody knew that you did the thing that you wanted to do, and it didn't matter if there's a piece of paper in the government office, everybody knows. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. I said, that's the blockchain.
Yep.
That's blockchain. Everybody knows. And you don't have to have a piece of paper someplace. Everybody knows. So I'm with you 100% on that one. I guess I'm reinforcing your point, I guess.
Well, so I was excited. I was out of politics. I'm on my merry way, and then COVID happened. So then, we all went through the COVID tyranny and everything else. And I got to see my then 10-year-old kids. I remember going to my daughter's ballet recital in February, or not February, I guess March, in New Hampshire, outdoors, where the parents had to take lawn furniture, social distance, and the children were wearing masks, doing an outdoor ballet and all that other stuff. And then a couple of other things happened. So I'm in crypto, and all of a sudden,
I'm gonna touch this piece too. I was so bothered by that. I was in New York City at the time. I still am, right? I'm a New York City guy. And it was so bad. I homeschooled my daughter because I couldn't stand her going to the prison that was her school. And it was a prison. I was like, no, the prisoners who are here in Rikers Island in New York City, in the most violent jail in the entire country, had more freedom than my daughter did. I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm with you. I'm just reinforcing that I'm with you, my friend. Keep going.
Yep. So I'm like, well, what is this COVID tyranny about? Unfortunately, my wife has been a liberty activist for a long time. She actually started a vaccine choice organization in New Hampshire in 2006. So, I mean, we're talking, she was like a decade.
She was way ahead of the curve.
She was way ahead of the curve, introducing legislation in New Hampshire to get religious exemptions and everything else. And so when we saw this coming, I mean, she saw what was coming on the vaccine front right away. But I started looking into this, and I'm like, well, what is the cause of this? Why are they pushing this? And something happened around that same time. So understand now, I'm in crypto, I'm out of politics.
Yep.
But, even in the great state of New Hampshire here, we still had businesses shut down. We still had lockdown orders. We still had mask mandates. Yep. And so we weren't free from that. But then I saw this huge crackdown on crypto. So I had mentioned that I was introduced to crypto in 2012 by a guy named Ian Freeman. Mm-hmm. Ian Freeman has been a part of the Free State Project. He's had a syndicated radio show for over 20 years. And I sat in on...
He's gone now, isn't he?
I sat in on his sentencing hearing with my wife. So he's doing
8 years. Yes.
8 years in federal prison for selling Bitcoin, which by the way, I believe he had a letter from a lawyer saying that it was legal to do. He followed Know Your Customer. He did all of the things that he thought he was supposed to do. He was targeted. There were 5 different branches of the federal government that came in. He was raided, Bearcats, the whole 9 yards. They took all of his stuff. Then they held him responsible for what one of his clients did. So he was selling people Bitcoin for fiat currency. That was his service. And he had somebody that was involved in romance scams. So basically, going after targeting old women or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Ian was found responsible for the actions of his customer, even though he didn't even know who his customer was, had gone through and done all of the different safeguards. Now, just this week, or maybe it was late last week, in addition to 8 years in federal prison, Ian has to pay $3.4 million in restitution to the victims. And if I read it properly, they basically have confiscated all of his other assets. So now I'm looking at that. Another free stater, Jeremy Kauffman, started a service called Library, also known as Odyssey, which is basically a censorship-resistant version of YouTube. He was targeted for 5 years by the SEC. I mean, there are a lot of crypto scams. This was not one of them. This is definitely kind of an edge case where there are a lot of people going out and selling their tokens and pumping them up. He was selling tokens that you actually use to post content and that arguably are more of a utility token, but they target him as a liberty activist and somebody built a free. So I started looking into this. All right, COVID tyranny, crackdown on crypto. What's all this about? And what I learned is, there truly is a coordinated plan to implement a one world government. And at the end of this, it's the opposite of what.
No, that went far. We went from Kaufman to one world government. That was a leap right there.
It was a leap, and by the way, I was surprised by this. So I'm like, okay, but you look at the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and I actually went through and I looked at those, and they want to regulate everything.
Okay, hold on. Before you go there,
Yep.
I want to talk to my audience real fast before you go there, because I know you're going to walk down a road. I want you to walk down, but let me get my audience set. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, and if you want to hear the rest, and I know you do, then do me a favor, click that like button. I bug you all the time for clicking the like button. And why would I do that? Because you know YouTube is going to screw me with algorithm. You know they're going to screw me over with that. So click that like button to make sure that I can get around those things. If you like me, then subscribe. It does matter. If you're watching on Twitter, then retweet this right now. It does matter. If you want to super chat me, you can. That supports the show. That's awesome if you're watching me on YouTube. Also, if you're watching me on YouTube, you can become a member if you like. Click the join button, $49 per month. Sorry, it's not crypto, but still, it is still joining per month if you want to. You can help me out to move this show forward. But no matter what you decide to do me one solid favor. Aaron's been so good to us, coming here, bringing us all this information, all these great stories. Follow him on Twitter and all the other things he's doing. He's at the Brownstone Institute. All his information is on Facebook and YouTube in the show description. Check him out. Follow him at Aaron R. Day on Twitter. All right, sorry about that, Aaron. I just want to make sure I was talking to my my audience. Okay, so let's move, if I could, from before we go to world government. I want to stay on the CBDC specifically, if I could, for a second. You have said it is the greatest threat, and the thing that I remember you mentioning once, which I didn't get until you said it, and that was the idea that if you have a CBDC, you don't actually own your money. Go down that road for me.
Well, the whole point behind central bank digital currencies is it's a digital form of money that is centrally controlled by the government and central banks, that can be programmed, can be monitored, and can be censored. And
but
so,
don't I own it though? But isn't it mine?
It is not yours. Literally, if the government decides that they want to kickstart the economy, they can say, look, all of the CBDC that you have in your bank account, if you don't use it by the end of the month, we're just going to confiscate it. They literally can program it at that level. And this has been part of ongoing discussions, and there's legislation in Europe, and you can actually look at how they've been modeling this out. This is absolutely in the plans for this. And so, I have an article that's coming out in the next few days, but I've looked into this. You see the quotes from the head of the Bank of International Settlements, which is basically the central bank to the central bankers, the head of the ECB, which is Europe's central bank, even members of the Federal Reserve. It's all about control. They sell it as being about financial inclusion and convenience, but they all say they want it to monitor transactions. They want to be able to censor transactions. And at the core of it, why it fits into kind of this world government model is it's the basis for social credit systems, vaccine passports, and digital IDs. So the way that this works in the future is if they don't like what you say on social media, or if you aren't engaging in the right behavior, and your social credit score drops, then that determines how much money you have access to and where you can spend that money. And this is already the case in China. So what I'm talking about may sound like some kind of dystopian science fiction novel. And in fact, I wrote a book. It's called The Final Countdown. It's on Amazon.
By the way, you can buy it on Amazon. I put the link. The link is on YouTube and the link's on Facebook. You can buy that book on Amazon if you want to. The Final Countdown. Yes, keep going.
So the whole first chapter of the book is this kind of, it's science fiction. Here's what things might look like in 2035 with CBDCs and universal basic income and social credit systems. And that's the first chapter. And the second chapter talks about the fact that everything that's in this little science fiction novel already exists somewhere in the developed world today. There are already CBDCs. There are already social credit systems in China.
Hold on. I got to go back again. Let me go back again. You also brought up UBI. And this is a part that I think a lot of people who support the idea of UBI or some other form of giveaway don't get, right? I get they like the idea of free money. Who doesn't? I get it. They like the concept of free money. Lots of people do. That's not crazy. But what I'm saying is, if they're going to give out whatever the free money is, if it's a digital currency, people are going to grab it because they're going to think, oh, it's free money. I'm happy to get my free money, my free dollars. And they're not going to realize, no, I'm starting the end. Like I'm starting to ruin everything because now it's going to be in digital currency. It's going to feel like free money, but it's going to be handcuffs. Am I wrong here?
Well, it's absolutely going to have handcuffs. And I mentioned the concept of a world government because it's important to understand why this is all coming about. Because
Okay.
unless you understand that there are groups, in particular, I mean, you have like the front-facing groups like the UN, the World Economic
Hmm.
Forum, the World Bank, IMF, and Bank of International Settlements. But you have other groups behind the scenes like the Trilateral Commission. In particular, I'll talk about the Trilateral Commission, which has been pushing a technocracy globalism movement since 1972 when they were founded. Literally, Brzezinski, who is kind of the intellectual horsepower behind that, literally has written books about and promoting the concepts of technocracy. And the idea behind technocracy is it's a form of government where elites pick scientists and engineers to make decisions for everyone else. There's no concept of property rights or individual rights.
Mm.
The viewpoint on this is, and I'll give them this is the most charitable view I can give it, which is that they think man can be perfected through the application of technology. But the only people that are smart enough to do that are the best scientists and engineers. And of course, those can only be picked by the elite. So they literally think this way. So their view is they can perfect things if only they have complete and total top-down control. So it is literally the antithesis of any pro-liberty movement. In fact, it kind of negates free will. It's literally determinism. And at the end of it, you get a social credit score because they know what you should eat. They know where you should live. They know how you should address people. They know what the education should be like. They want to regulate the land, the air, and the sea. I mean, this is literally what the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are for the UN. I took those and turned them into what a social credit system would look like. I said, if you took the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, what would you measure and what types of behavior would you reward and punish if you were one of these elites that has kind of a scarcity mindset and desire to kind of control everything from the top down. And it's fascinating, and the book goes into this. But the technocracy itself started the term was coined in 1919. But
Okay,
there was
hold on. You got Aaron. You have so much stuff. I love it, but I gotta have my audience participate a little bit. I got a bunch of comments. I'm going to grab a couple of them as we're moving forward. So Mike Voss is teasing. He goes, "Wait, Obamacare didn't save business money or help public? Who could imagine the power of competition?" He's teasing, but you get what he's going with that one. So yes.
Yep.
Space Jason says they Silk Roaded him. Talking about your friend Ian Freeman. They Silk Roaded him. Same idea. Yes. Andrew says never forget honesty.
Actually, Ian is even worse than Silk Road. I mean, Silk Road, I'm perfectly fine with the legalization of drugs, but arguably what was going on that platform was illegal. It's not even clear the romance scam that Ian's client was involved with. It's not even clear to me that that's actually illegal. I think I remember watching a documentary on Amazon Prime where they actually showed a guy that was going around doing that. I'm not entirely clear. Not that I'm advocating for it, and nor was Ian.
Sure.
I'm not even sure this was actually an illegal activity. So what Ian got
that's
was
even worse.
I think it was arguably worse, and it's part of the crackdown of stopping people from buying and selling cryptocurrency in person to person. Right. So you have what Ian was doing with his service and with his ATMs throughout New Hampshire and in New England. And then you had local Bitcoins, which was another service that kind of helped facilitate that as well, which is also shut down. This is a big part of a massive crackdown on all of cryptocurrency. And what I found in my research is the reason for this is to usher in CBDC. And what people don't realize, and what I didn't realize until I started writing my book, and I'm somebody who's living off of cryptocurrency.
Right.
They have already completed 3 CBDC pilots in the United States. The technology already exists. President Biden has signed Executive Order 14067. He signed this on March the 9th, 2022, which authorizes the exploration of a CBDC as well as the regulation of all other digital assets. So what happened to Ian? What happened to Jeremy? All of these crypto exchanges. CZ from Binance, who was fined $4 billion and was arrested and is facing criminal charges. Everything that's going on, I mean, FTX, that he actually engaged in fraudulent activity. But the point is they're shutting off exchanges and they're shutting off person-to-person the ability for people to use cryptocurrency. And the reason for it is they can't have control over CBDC so long as there is a decentralized alternative.
Right. But let me ask two things. When Joel brings up a point, he agrees with you. He says government mandates will become so much easier to force upon us. That's clearly true. But I've understood, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. I've been told, I'll say that, and you can tell me if it's real or not, that Bitcoin is really special in that Bitcoin really can't be controlled because there's really no CEO of it, but the other coins can. Is that true?
You know, it's funny. I spent so much time on this. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of hours, because I could go into a whole conversation about what the Bitcoin white paper says versus what people now think of as Bitcoin, which is BTC, which has actually, in my opinion, been a perverted form of the original vision in the original white paper.
Huh.
Bitcoin,
Okay.
Bitcoin was originally supposed to be peer-to-peer digital cash. It was supposed to be a replacement for money. It was supposed to be money for the world that people could use for day-to-day transactions. In 2017, there was a technological change. There was kind of I would call it a coup. And some different people came in and said, rather than increasing the size of the blocks and basically how many transactions can handle the main Bitcoin, we're going to keep that small, and then we're going to develop all of these other proprietary things, which it turns out have ties to the MIT Multimedia Lab and potential funding from Jeffrey Epstein. They took digital cash and turned it into digital gold. And so now we're sitting here today where people are buying $10 billion worth of Bitcoin has been bought through ETFs. So now something that was supposed to be digital cash is something that people are buying a percentage of ownership in a ETF run by BlackRock. You don't have any control over that Bitcoin. You can't redeem your ETF shares for Bitcoin. If you sell the ETF, you will get paid in cash. And I will tell you this, my personal opinion is they finally passed the green light on that because it will make it easy to confiscate Bitcoin. If more and more people are buying Bitcoin through ETFs, just like when FDR confiscated gold in the 1930s, when FDR confiscated gold, he only confiscated 75% of the gold. If you had your gold in a vault, if you had your gold in a safety deposit box, they just went and took it. Now, as an individual, if you had it in your self-custody, you were supposed to exchange your gold, but many did not. And this, to me, is the exact analogy that I would make with what's going on with Bitcoin. So now, while technically it is decentralized to the extent that there is no corporate entity, if now where people are buying it is through BlackRock and Fidelity, where they don't have it in their own possession, or they're buying it on exchanges and keeping it on the exchanges. One thing I say to somebody, if you buy crypto, make sure you have it in your own self-custody wallet. Because what I think,
now you got me scared because my Bitcoin is on an exchange. Now I'm scared now. I got to get it off.
I would get your Bitcoin. I onboarded 1,000 people to crypto. In fact, part of what I'm doing with the book is I'm now doing 4-hour workshops across the country where people walk out of the workshop with an understanding of CBDCs, but they will actually walk out with physical gold, physical silver, and cryptocurrency in a self-custody wallet, because I want to make sure people are empowered with these alternatives. But every exchange has failed. Mt. Gox was the original one. But Mt. Gox, Bittrex, all of these exchanges fail, and there are multiple points of failure. There's regulatory risk, there's technology risk, there's risk of fraud, and so there's really no reason to keep it on the exchange at all. And now with all of the additional government reporting, again, it's going to make it that much easier to see. So I am always a big fan of self-custody. But the next step on this, so when you say, well, okay, Bitcoin's a little bit different. I just saw today that they're looking at they're asking Bitcoin miners now to fill out paperwork regarding, carbon output. So they can go and target. So they can target crypto from the standpoint of targeting miners and trying to ban or tax and regulate mining. And I believe that the next step that we're going to see is banning self-custody cryptocurrency wallets. So to me, we're in a big rush right now because they want CBDC. The government, as it turns out, believe it or not, Congress, with their power of the purse, does not want to give up monopoly control over money. I talk to people all the time. It's amazing. I ran for president of the United States. I got out of politics when I was so alarmed by this that I'm like, I wrote this book, and I'm like, to elevate this issue, I'm going to run for president as a Republican to try to get on the debate stage to alert people about this. This is the only reason why. I mean, obviously, I knew I wasn't. I haven't killed anybody, and I don't have I don't have the necessary qualifications to be president. I haven't committed fraud or any of these other things. But
you're probably a decent human being. You can't. It's not good. You can't get it.
No, there's no choice. But I contacted 3,000 press. I sent out multiple press releases, and I've done political activism before. Nobody in the mainstream media wanted to touch this, primarily because my big push has been, if you want to stop World War III, if you want to halt CBDC and you want to end the Fed, it's basically a bank run where people take their money out of the bank, convert it to self-custody crypto, gold, and silver, and use those alternative assets in a parallel economy. That would solve it. Right. Like, there's no voting out of it, but this is a vote with your feet. And that has been my message. Right. But we are in a race against time, because literally while I was finishing up my book, Ian was sentenced. Or no, actually Ian was sentenced, had his sentencing hearing slightly after, because he read my book. He actually wrote a review of the book. And Jeremy, all of this happened just while I was writing this book and campaigning. So this crackdown is comprehensive. And now what's going on with Bitcoin, to me, is a travesty, because I think what they're doing is they're setting this up so that they can make it easier to confiscate Bitcoin through these ETFs.
Got it. I think that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Let me talk to my audience for a second, if I could. Guys, again, if you like what you're hearing, click that like button. I know I'm bugging you, but you know that what we're talking about now, they don't want us to hear. They're going to mess with our algorithm. So let's do our best to click that like button if you can. I appreciate it tremendously. You can always subscribe to my YouTube page if you're watching on YouTube, and click the bell if you could. If you're also watching on YouTube, you can super chat me or become a member if you want to for $4.99. You can do that by clicking join. If you're watching on Twitter, though, you know what? Retweet it right now. Just retweet it right now. You can. It's all good. Retweeting does matter, but no matter what, you have to hit the like button. And please do one last thing for me. Follow Aaron. Follow him on Twitter at Aaron R. Day. You can check out also his book. The link to his book in Amazon is right there in the show description. Do that too if you would. It will help tremendously. Let me grab a couple, if I could, of more comments. Lil J says, I like free money, just not coming from the government. Yes, I guess if someone gives you free money, that's good, I guess. That's good. Joel says, the master race is coming. I like that. Mike says, free money is government crack. The first one's meant to get you hooked. UBI especially so. So I think you got people who are on your side here, and I do hear that again. But Legacy Zach says, Bitcoin Cash is the true Bitcoin. Do you think that's true?
So I've lived off of crypto, as I said, since 2019, and I use in my book I lay out which cryptos I think serve. It's because this is not an investment book. This is which cryptos can you use as a replacement for money. And Bitcoin Cash is the number one that I've actually used personally. It's the most accessible. It's the one that it has low fees, and you can actually use it in more places than others. But there's Bitcoin SV, there's Litecoin, there's Ravencoin, and then there are a couple of privacy coins, Monero and Zcash. But the thing is, right now there's a huge lawsuit going on, which is Copa versus Craig Wright, and I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's a big lawsuit, and the outcome of it could be pretty huge, because Craig Wright claims to be Satoshi, and if he's found to be Satoshi, then he's making intellectual property claims. Craig Wright.
Oh, Craig I remember that. That's right. Yeah. Okay, I remember that now. Yeah.
So I've been following this. The trial's been going on now. They finished up day 8 today. I've been following this every day. It's absolutely fascinating. The whole story is fascinating, but there are legal implications for all of it. Because Craig is also suing the Bitcoin developers. He's suing people involved with Bitcoin Cash. And so depending upon if he's determined to be Satoshi, there are implications for all of this. And so so of course I'm going around saying, hey, you should get into crypto, gold, and silver. And then when people ask, well, which one? Well, unfortunately, I do have to sit down and walk through what all the risks are, because it's not a slam dunk. It's not easy. There are all kinds of technical and legal factors, but Bitcoin Cash, to your audience member, is what I found to be the most useful so far.
There we go. Michael says, I have a feeling that is it DIIA app? I actually don't know what that is. Rolled out in Ukraine is going to factor into forcing of the CBDC in the US. Do you know what the DIIA app is?
Well, I know Ukraine is big on pushing this stuff, but I haven't looked into it much in terms of what the association would be with that in the U.S. But other than
Michael,
to say
you just made some stuff up to try to. You made us look bad, Michael. You just made some stuff up. You're lying. That's not a real thing. I'm kidding. It might be. I have no idea. I'm just teasing.
Well, it might not. I don't know
if
that name I'm not familiar with, but I do know Ukraine is big on digital records and all that other stuff. So I don't know if there's necessarily a tie there, but what I want to say to people is, independent of this, they have done 3 pilots. The first CBDC pilot was done from 2020 to 2022 between the MIT Multimedia Lab and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And this system can do 1.7 million transactions per second. Let me put this in context. Wow. The current US financial system, the traditional financial system, can do 50 to 100,000 transactions per second. This CBDC can do 1.7 million transactions per second. And Bitcoin can do 7, right? So there's and I go into this in the book. So like if everybody did a mad rush to exit fiat tomorrow, we would need to use multiple cryptocurrencies because there isn't one that has the capacity to handle all of the transactions as an alternative, but they could get there. And that's one of the things that I'm talking to people within the crypto community about. How do we accelerate those plans? Because I will tell you, this is frightening. Not only have those pilots been done, I spoke to, when I was, I went to 20 states, when I was running for president, spoke at a bunch of events. Ted Cruz tried to put in place an anti-CBDC bill. It was absolutely killed in the Senate. He said, he said, he doesn't understand the technology that well. And he's like, he's the most technologically sophisticated in the Senate, which means we're all in trouble. But he also said the way that it's looking right now, there's a real chance that Elizabeth Warren will be the next chair of the Finance Committee. And the bill that he put in place was actually to prevent the Federal Reserve from implementing a CBDC without congressional approval. That was what he's concerned about. He's actually concerned about them acting unilaterally, and there is reason to believe that. And so this is why I say I think there's a real shot that they're going to have CBDCs implemented before the election. So to a certain degree, what I'm advocating is for people to exit the dollar and start using these alternatives now. Don't wait or hope for politicians, because we already know where Biden is on this. And realistically, Congress is going to be 80 to 90% the same as it is right now, based on historical precedent. So there's not really a huge path. And my personal belief, and you're already seeing this start to happen right now. You can see, I tweet about this every day, but it's like, there was that shooting at the Joel Osteen's church in
I remember.
Texas. Yep. And I looked at that and it's like, okay, this is a woman from El Salvador who's a transsexual, who's pro-Palestine. I'm like, a terrorist attack is a way to unite Republicans and Democrats to push through a CBDC in an emergency on the basis of stopping money laundering and terrorism. And if you look at it, the Patriot Act was passed 45 days after 9/11. TARP was passed 18 days after Lehman Brothers failed. The $2.2 million CARES Act was passed 16 days after COVID was declared a pandemic on a voice vote. There are people in the United States Congress right now that voted for all 3 of those things.
Yes,
still.
Absolutely.
So when I'm handicapping this, I'm saying this is why when I say this is the biggest threat, it's the biggest threat in that knowing that the technology exists and that the president has already put out an executive order, we know they're just waiting for an emergency. And we certainly have a global stage right now with enough
Hold on. I want to walk down another issue that you brought up in the past that I think my audience doesn't understand, or probably doesn't. And that's the idea. If I get it right, it's a regulatory liability network. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Tell them what this is. This is when I've heard you talk about this, this has been the scariest thing for me to imagine. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So there are 3 pilots. There's the retail pilot, there's a wholesale pilot, and then there's this thing called regulatory liability network. And of course, any project like this, they give a boring name in the hopes that people won't look at it. And in fact, I got to tell you, it took me several times to read the white paper. The idea behind this is basically one database to monitor all transactions, all CBDCs, and all other digital assets on basically in one database that can be monitored and tracked by multiple third parties. And so the idea here is we're moving towards, and of course, the problem with, being in crypto, I've been looking at this as, oh yeah, we can tokenize everything. And so that we can tokenize and trade anything. It can be turned into a digital asset and traded. And if you do that without third parties, this is as close an expression of capitalism and free markets as we've ever had in human history.
Sure.
The flip to that is regulated liability network, where everything is tokenized, but tracked in a database that multiple people can censor and program. So now imagine this. Now imagine you buy an Apple computer, which in the future you'll only be able to buy with CBDC. That computer will be tokenized, tracked to your ID, tracked to CBDC. So now when your social credit score drops, or if you say something on social media they don't like, not only can they shut off your money, they can shut off access to your asset and your ability to sell your computer or even use your computer, because we are moving towards a world of the tokenization of everything. And when I say everything, part of what happened under COVID is they rolled out the contact tracing on cell phones.
Yes.
So there are wireless tokens tracking your movement. So your movement is tokenized and can be tracked on a database along with all of these other things, and then viewed and managed by multiple central third parties. So to me, this is
literally they could say something like, you did something bad, Larry, so you can't go to the movies. And if I go to the movies, it gets up, Larry went to the movies, the cops come arrest me because I can't go to the movies because I did the bad thing. Literally, that could happen.
That could happen. And I thought I saw somewhere, it was either in San Francisco or somewhere in California, where they were proposing this idea that if you go 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, your car automatically shuts off. This is kind of somebody actually proposed a piece of legislation like that. But if your car was tokenized, on the blockchain, then they could remotely deactivate your car. So if you say, if Larry said something that they don't like, they can shut off access to your own vehicle. This is the granularity that we're talking about. And when you look at where China is right now, China has a sophisticated social credit system already in place. They do it on a province by province basis, but they have facial recognition technology. They have surveillance technology where they're tracking, in some cases, whether somebody's cheating on a video game, or if somebody isn't spending enough time with their elderly parents, their social credit score is diminished. There are 23 million people in China today that are blacklisted based on their social credit score. And what it means to be blacklisted means you have less access to healthcare, transportation options, housing options. And so this is a reality today for 23 million people. And of course, as you would expect a totalitarian government to do, they penalize the most severely anyone who speaks out against the government or commits what they perceive to be financial crimes against the government. And I think, to me, the scariest words in the English language are that would never happen in America, because I think at this point, China is not this distant, ideologically out there place. We have the same surveillance.
I got to say something here, and I got a couple things I got to bring up. The first thing I got to bring up is I used to think that way, like, oh, it's America. Really, I kind of thought I had that still in me, right? I'm a veteran, a Marine, pro-America. I still thought that. But what completely pulled that out of my mind was what happened in New York City during the lockdowns. When the lockdowns happened, New York City, if you go back 20 years, 30 years, we were a city of a bunch of, we were rebels. This is where punk came out, right? It's where rap came out. I mean, we were just the rebels. We didn't like this system. We were like, no, to hell with you, system. We're New Yorkers. We're tough. We're hard. But when that happened, we were lambs to the slaughter. We were quiet. We said nothing. Not only did we accept the lockdowns, we encouraged them. We were part of it. I remember, and this drove me crazy. Where I live in Queens, in Astoria, we have a large park where I live. I saw a woman, she's probably in her early 20s, to your point, running outside, thin, a runner with a mask on by herself. And at that point, I thought, Okay, we're done. Like that, that's it. That right there is the symbol. She's outside, alone, in her 20s,
Yep.
in great shape, running with a mask on. I was like, that's it. It's over. So I'm with you. I would have never thought, if I've been in the cities, I was born in the city. If it was the 70s or 80s, I would have been with you. I'd be like, there's no way, no way. Now I'm like, no, you're right. It'll happen. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, it'll happen. And again, it's on a fast track now. So once you look at the surveillance infrastructure that was put in place with COVID, again, the contact tracing and all this other stuff, this was just, COVID was just a test run. COVID put in place a whole new set of infrastructure. What they can do next is going to be larger in scope and easier to roll out, because I don't get the sense that we've necessarily learned our lesson. And interestingly, even on like the pandemic front, you still have the WHO putting together pandemic treaties and alliances and working on global vaccine passports. So despite all of what we now know, that hasn't changed policy from the perspective of what these global organizations are doing. And Biden has actually said, well, we're going to participate in those things. And so literally no lessons have been learned. Nobody's been fired. Who's been fired? Who in public health was fired? And regardless of what people's stance, on the issue, public health was responsible for creating the virus, creating the vaccine, and then creating all of the other responses from a public health perspective. So so the death count from this is in the millions, and no one was fired.
So now let me go to that next step, which I think you were talking about earlier. Now I want to go to the world government thing, right? You've explained how it's already being done in certain areas, but why? This is the leap that I want to make sure I get, right? I get why a local government would do it. I totally get it. I get why a state would do it. I get why China would do it. But how does that, or how do you know, or why do you believe that now translates not into just China being a horrible country, or America being a horrible country, but how does that translate into a one world government?
So this has been designed from the very beginning. If you look at the United Nations and you look at quotes from the very founding, the whole point of the United Nations from the very beginning was to create a one world global government. But then when you look at the Trilateral Commission when it was founded in 1972 by David Rockefeller and with Brzezinski, who is this ultimate technocrat, their vision. So the Trilateral Commission means North America, Europe, and Asia. And basically what they did was they infiltrated governments in those three areas from the top down over a 50-year period of time. The biggest myth I think that we have about our political system is that it is in any way grassroots and in any way from the bottom up. Our federal political system has nothing to do with that. These people are selected. As an example, the Trilateral Commission, Jimmy Carter's cabinet, all but one member of Jimmy Carter's cabinet were also members of the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission has had multiple people in every political administration since 1972. They have people in governments in North and other places in Canada. They have people in Europe. They have people in Asia. In fact, I spoke with a guy named Patrick Wood, who's a phenomenal guy. He's literally written multiple books about technocracy, and he tracks, because they don't publish who the Trilateral Commission members are. So he's been individually tracking this information for decades. He actually sent over to me the current roster of, I think there are 400 or 500 people globally in this Trilateral Commission. So what they've done is they've infiltrated countries from the top down, and they've been pushing policies around globalism and basically eroding national borders and moving towards this for 50 years. This has been a coordinated thing from the top down through governments across the world, moving into this goal of a one world government. And you can see kind of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as being the blueprint for what that might look like.
So let me, ask two parts. Do you think, you talked about this technocracy? Is this, and not that I'm saying I agree with it, I don't agree with it, but is this malevolent, or is this actually people who think they're helping? Like when they tell us no one's going to own anything and we're going to eat the bugs, is this because they think that's the right answer and they're trying to help us? Or is it actually evil? I mean, either way, it's wrong. I'm asking not for the impact. What do you think the intent is? What is your view on the intent?
I give them the most charitable view of it. just for the, I'll give them, let's assume, because there are all kinds of conspiracy theories on the other, I'll say, let's go with they're not shape-shifting reptilians or something like that. Let's go with the positive
right. Okay.
The positive view of it simply doesn't work from the standpoint of, this is, again, there's what you know, there's what you don't know, and then there's what you don't know. And this whole technocracy idea is that these are people that think that what they know is all there is to know. And based on their scarcity mindset, they're going to impose it on everyone else. So even under the scenario where there's a positive intention, they're leaving out the infinite possibility that is out there that we don't know and can't explore when we control everything from the top down. So that's the most charitable view I can give of it. I mean, my viewpoint is, and when I ran for president, it was on, I'm for free will, decentralization, love, and abundance. And this technocracy side is for the opposite of that. It is for determinism. It is for fear. It is for centralization, and it is for a scarcity mindset. That is inherent in the ideology. In fact, technocracy started out, and this is an interesting thing, because people say, well, what would a CBDC be backed by? What would a global CBDC be backed by? And the answer is energy. The original idea of technocracy, yes. So Technocracy Inc. was an actual organization and corporation started in California in the 1930s. And this movement actually had some traction. I think they had some ties into the FDR. I mean, this was to the point where, like, this was a cult level where everybody would get together in meetings. They would all wear gray suits. GM actually made a color, a technocracy gray, for GM cars. So you had people involved in this technocracy movement that were pushing this. And at the core of their idea is that we would shift from a supply and demand system for currency in economics to one based on energy credits. So that idea was designed in 1931. And so when you looked at what was going on recently with ESG, the basis of CBDC would in fact be carbon credits and energy credits. That is part of what that movement is all about. So they haven't deviated from and so what that means is, from the top down perspective, their viewpoint is, we have a finite amount of energy. Everything in the economy has to be measured. We have to measure all of the input and output of energy. So whatever it is we can conceive of from the top down in terms of energy usage and production, that will be the basis of how society operates. So when you think about how limiting that is literally how the all of society and what is possible is based on what elites believe is the optimal energy production. That is essentially what the whole system is based on. And it still is based on that. And that is still what they're moving towards.
Let me grab a couple of comments if I could. Karen says, one day you're talking about the rotten juice in the fridge and boom, the fridge is locked and you can't open it for 3 days. I don't know, Karen. I think for some of us who drop a couple pounds, that might not be a bad thing. Just lock the fridge for a couple of days. It'll be fine. I'm teasing, obviously. But yeah, this is a point that I think we're bringing up. This is the idea of you don't even own your fridge, right? So you ate the wrong food, or worse, something more realistic that's happening in New York right now, directly to Aaron's point. New York is already trying to monitor the amount of meat that people eat. So you don't eat so much meat because of, the energy that it takes to make meat. So Karen, you had one extra hamburger or one extra steak or one too many pork chops and no more meat for you. Shut down the fridge. I think that's not a joke. That's real. Am I?
No, well, it is.
Are we wrong on this?
Actually, it's 100% real. So my company, and I've battled with weight my entire life. So when I started my company to help with weight loss, so I've studied a lot about, if you look at the cause of obesity, or if you look at when obesity really picked up, it really started to accelerate with the 1992 USDA food pyramid, which put 11 to 15 servings of carbs at the base of it. So I tend to, as you can probably tell, talking to me, I like to figure out, I keep on asking, where did this come from? I keep on asking the question to figure out what the source. And it turns out the USDA food pyramid was never designed with optimizing health in mind.
No,
nobody even measured that. That wasn't even part of the calculation. Well, guess what? There's a new food pyramid coming. It's called the Lancet food pyramid. And it actually has in it reduction of meat, as you said, like this is literally in a new food pyramid. It includes sugar. They actually put sugar in there, which is a horrible
I
idea
heard
from a
about
health
it.
perspective.
Terrible.
And
Terrible.
it contemplates bug protein. Now, when you start digging into this and you look at, well, how
Gotta
did they
eat the
come up with
bugs.
this? So their conception of this food pyramid is not how do we optimize the health of individual human beings. They're
Yeah.
starting out with
Agreed.
a quote holistic view. So what's that holistic view? The 17 sustainable development goals. So they look at all of the sustainable development goals. So how does this map to energy? How does this map to the environment? How does it map to diversity? How does it map to all of those things? So the people designing your food and nutritional guidelines don't even have your optimized health in the top
Yes.
3 of their concerns. And they'll
Yes.
put it out. They'll put it in health textbook. They'll mandate it. By the way, in fact, the next step is you won't be able to buy anything that doesn't fit into that, because
That is my
it's
biggest worry.
a CBDC
That
is
is
like a
my
health
biggest
savings
worry.
account. A CBDC is like
Mhm.
a health savings account. If you have a health savings account, it's a debit card that you can use, but you can only use that debit card to buy things that are on a pre-approved list of health expenditures. Well, now imagine
Mhm.
it's everything. There's a ledger of everything that's possible to buy that's determined by these scientists and engineers who have your best interests at heart. But the database of things that you can possibly buy is determined by people from the top, and how much of that you can access is dictated by
Right.
your social credit score and your behavior as measured by them against their standards for how you should operate and live your life as a human being.
Yes. I've been on keto for 13 years. So if they start cutting meat, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I almost never eat sugar. It is so rare that I eat sugar. I mean, like twice a year. Like I rarely have any sugar ever. If that happens to me, I'm in trouble. We're gonna be in trouble. Mike says, wait, sugar and bugs are now essential to our diet. What a demented world. Yeah, but
This is
to
this
Aaron's
is
point,
actually true. Yep. This is
yes,
true. My
yes.
jaw dropped when I said, look it up, Lancet, look at the Lancet diet. It'll blow your mind. I might even write an article about it, because I think people are not aware of it. They are trying to kill us. They view us as being, optional in their plan. Human beings
Absolutely.
are not a priority in this.
So let me grab this piece, because Zach brings this up, and I'm not sure if this is a connecting or not. He says transhumanism is a bane on this earth. Is this transhumanism, or is he off on this, or is this part of the same world? I don't know if they're connected. I guess is what I'm asking.
I think that they are. And this same guy, Patrick Wood, that I was talking about
Mhm.
technocracy, he's actually written a book recently. His newest book is Technocracy and Transhumanism, and it's actually about
Oh,
the
okay.
the intersection of these things. And so, certainly, depending upon what your spiritual beliefs are, you've seen probably Yuval Harari and some of these other people. They've actually contemplated and discussed the idea of creating a new religion, at creating a
Oh,
religion based on technology, creating a religion based on AI, basically constructing and building a Christ consciousness using AI, and then using implants and the merger of technology with humans. And so I always look at this, I struggle, because I've always been interested in technology, and as a capitalist and a liberty guy, I'm old enough to remember when I actually thought tech had a liberty streak to it. In fact, I'm old enough to
me
remember when Bill
too.
Gates was actually a libertarian. I remember like
Yep.
he was actually kind of like and boy, that, like, I think Bill Gates's, villain arc
He's
is
not there
probably
anymore. That's for sure. He's not there.
no, he's not there anymore. And so while transhumanism could be a good thing, it's not, based on the people that are pushing it and
Mm.
what their agenda is. And to the extent that all of this is driven from the top down, it's a horrible thing. And this tech is driven from the top down. I've been using AI a lot, just playing around with it, just as it was released, and it has already gone more woke. Search engines back in the mid 90s to late 90s were wide open. They didn't have censorship.
Yeah.
They didn't have all of these screens. You could search for, not that there was a lot on the web at that point, but you weren't going to have, information filtered out. And in fact, it took 10 years until, Google came in and displaced some of the early players. And even in the early stages, Google was actually a legit search engine. So it took over a decade for search engines to go from being something that opened people up to information to then providing this filter. AI,
Right.
in less than a year, is now more of a filtration system and I think a censorship system than they did more in 1 year than it took 10 years for search engines in terms of the ability to filter out and control the perception of what we see through these systems. It's horrendous how these things work now. And so that's a horrible thing. And we really don't have any alternatives to that. I'm looking for open source AI. I like to say, if you're going to have cryptocurrency, have a self-custody wallet. I'm now looking for self-custody AIs, open source AIs I can have on my own computer, at trying to figure out how to do that. Because again, they're useless now. They literally have filtered out information. They won't even respond to certain questions. I mean, you have to sit there and be clever to figure out a way to work around to get information out of the system. And that's just 1 year in.
I have seen that more than once. Yes, I have said, wow, wow. Now I understand where you're going. So I guess the last question I have for you is, well, maybe it's two. Maybe they're related. The first one is, do you think the CBDC is Thanos? It is inevitable. Do you think it's inevitable, or do you think we can stop it? What does your gut tell you?
My gut, we can stop it. It's going to require direct action. It's going to require people taking their money out of the bank, converting it to self-custody crypto, gold, and silver, and using it, which I've done. And I know I'm not the only person that's done this. There aren't many people that have done this, but there are some others that have done this. If 2 or 3% of the population does that, it will shut down the system, because understand, they are intentionally
that's small.
It's that small, and I'll explain why. They're intentionally destroying fiat. They know that they're destroying fiat. If you look at what has happened, and just as a quick aside, every fiat currency in human history has failed. There has never been a successful fiat currency. Like, I did an analysis of like 775 of them. The average fiat currency only lasts for about 27 years. If you look at the 7 main reasons that fiat currencies fail, the US dollar is flashing bright red on all 7 of these areas. So, I mean, inflation, economic mismanagement, technology, competition, on and on down the line, excessive spending, defense spending. So basically the dollar is collapsing, and they know the dollar's collapsing, but this is a typical problem reaction solution. This is how we get the Patriot Act. This is how we get TARP. This is how we get the CARES Act. They create the problem. They know that the reaction they're going to get is fear. And out of fear, people will often pick security over freedom. And this is how the Constitution has been shredded over the decades. And so they know that. So they built CBDC. So they know in an emergency, they're going to be able to bring that in. But if we have an alternative, and we can show, so what we have to have is an alternative solution, because we know they're going to generate the problem and we know what the reaction is going to be. So my entire purpose on this, I'm doing these workshops, but eventually I'm going to make it an online course. So, because I know people are not going to be broadly awake about this topic. As I've traveled the country, I would say 80% of people have never even heard of CBDCs. Cato did a study, and it's like half of the people that they surveyed said they didn't like the idea, but that was after they presented the idea. So most people are really, this isn't on their radar. And so, I'm not saying, well, we're going to be able to, but if at the moment they do that, people realize there's a way to quickly on-ramp to gold, crypto, and silver and to start using it, at least there's an option. And this is literally what I have been focusing since, for a year now, is on figuring out how to get this message out. And it's a combination of the book and the workshops and empowering people directly. We can win. And in fact, we have to win. I will say, so I'm a big believer in voting with your feet. Not only did I exit the dollar, but I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project. And I love the Free State Project, and I'd love to encourage you to move. But at the same time, we have to, there's no coexistence with a one world global technocracy. You're not going to be able to carve off a place in the woods when you are fighting against people that are looking to create and control and regulate every asset on earth. That doesn't coexist. So we have to stop them. And in my opinion,
I got to tell you, Aaron, what you just said is one of the reasons why I stay in New York. People often say, Larry, why do you stay in New York City? It's what are you doing? It's a communist state. Yeah. Literally everyone who represents me, from my city to my state to my federal representatives, all of them are members of the DSA. All of them are members of the Democratic Socialists of America. Every one of them. That's where I live. Why would I stay here? But because, to your point, Aaron, if I beat them here, I can beat them anywhere. And if I move, it's just a matter of time. They're going to get me anyway. It depends upon what year. Is it 1 year, 10 years, 20 years? They're going to come get me and my family anyway. I got to fight them here. And the thing is, if I can politically make any kind of impact, if I can run for mayor next year and get on the debate stage, run for governor again in 2020, in 2026, if I can do any of these things, we got a shot. Maybe we got a shot. All right. Maybe that is the answer. So I'm with you on that. So anything.
But my belief is,
Aaron, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, my belief is if we don't stop CBDC, it doesn't matter if you're in New Hampshire or New York. If the government can centrally control access to your money and dictate your behavior, it doesn't matter where you live. This is why I believe this is the most important issue, because people have whatever their favorite issues are or whatever their hot button issues are. Well, you're not going to be able to have any form of political activism if your government can completely control and censor your money based on your political speech.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
So I can't stress the urgency enough. I want to get this word out, but more than just getting the word out and, scaring people. I've had people, when I give my talk, it's like they're in tears, which is part of why I've decided to make it a workshop, because again, I want people to walk away saying, no, you don't have to just, sit there and be resigned to the fact that there are these people doing this bad thing. We can change the outcome, but we're not going to change the outcome in the election. Again, I talked to the people the votes are not there. If they try to implement a CBDC before the election, there is no way to stop it. The votes are not there. You're not going to call your congressman. It's not going to work because they're going to bring it in under a fearful thing. I talked to Vivek. He read my book. I had multiple conversations with him about him. He convinced Trump to adopt an anti-CBDC stance. Do I believe Trump? No. Right. I mean, am I going to rest assured? Like he didn't follow through on anything else. Why would he follow through on this? I mean, with him, he just says, well, I cut the best deal I could cut. I'm the best deal maker ever. And then everybody gives him a pass for actually violating what he said he was going to do because he uses this. I cut a great deal. So I'm not resting at all. We even though RFK and all the libertarian candidates, Mike Tirmont has signed my anti-CBDC pledge. And others, all the libertarians are great on this issue, but I'm genuinely concerned about, do we even get to the 2024 election? That's how fast this is. And that's the part of this that was alarming to me about how far they are, because you probably weren't aware of that. When I said to you, they did a 2-year pilot and they can do 1.7 million transactions per second. Was that ever on your radar?
No, I did not know that.
Because the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, will go on TV and say, well, we haven't even decided if we want to investigate something like this. Meanwhile, they've done 3 pilots and the technology is sitting there. And they did this thing FedNow last year, where they built an infrastructure for real-time payment between banks. So they basically rolled out an infrastructure in July of last year called FedNow. Wow. And that is the technology on top of which they can just roll out a CBDC. So this is something that could be done in a week because they've been planning and testing. And meanwhile, nobody knows anything about it. So, so can we win? Yeah, well, we can win, but and I appreciate you having me on, because I'm trying to get in front of as many people as possible. And you can imagine there are a lot of people that don't
for people to talk about your workshop. Should they be following you on Twitter? What should they be doing?
You can follow me on Twitter. My website, I have a website, which is day2024.com. It was my political campaign site. I'm no longer running, but it does have information about the workshop. You can link to my book. It has some of the other interviews that I've done as well. So day2024.com is another way, but I'm mostly on Twitter because I've been shadow banned everywhere else. So that's pretty much the place at this point.
There we go. That's the place to go to see what's going on. Day2024.com. Anything else I should be talking about before we wrap this up?
No. I mean, other than to stress the urgency, I mean, I urge people to look at this now, because this is not This isn't in the future. This is now. And that's the alarming part.
So here is what I want to ask my audience, guys. Please click that like button. It does matter. Before you take off, click that like button. Please do so. But one more thing I'm going to ask my audience before I let you guys go. Once this is over and this show is done and live is over, come back on right afterwards and put a comment right afterwards. The algorithms love that. So once the show's over, come on back on Facebook or come on back on YouTube or come on back on Twitter and put a comment. The algorithms love that. So please do that if you would. I would appreciate it. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I will see you all very soon.